Past few weeks have been very exciting for superhero fans. Long-awaited anticipation for two iconic superhero IPs, the Fantastic Four and Superman films, have just been released in a time where superhero films are on a steady decline. A lot of original Marvel films have been overstuffed with mediocre and bloated content with not much staying power, while DC fans haven't had a real big hit with their respective DCU really ever. And I've been tragically optimistic as the announcement of a new universe headed by James Gunn is set to reintroduce a new era of reimagined heroes different from the Snyder DCU. So after all the hype and the buildup of two of the biggest studios releasing films about their two biggest staple characters within 1 week of each other, did these films succeed in winning back audiences? Are these great films that superhero fans have been waiting for? I'm going to be reviewing both films together to get my honest thoughts because these films are really inseparable for me, and reviewing both can give an overall bigger picture of the superhero genre today. Also, to preface this, I am a comic book fan and a superhero fan, and I have been my entire life. I will talk about the comic booky aspects of these films and give my opinions accordingly. And lastly, I will not spoil either of these films, but there may be plot points that one can consider spoilers, so you have been warned. Both films, in my opinion, succeed with the characterizations of their heroes. David Corenswet, Rachel Brosnahan, Nicholas Hoult, Vanessa Kirby, Pedro Pascal, Joseph Quinn, and really both casts of these films are great. There seems to be an attempt to go back and give these characters their original characterizations in the comics, whereas previous MCU/DCU films, the characterizations are more clip notes compared to what the characters were written in the comics. Tony Stark in all of his comics pre-Iron Man 2008 was a very different character before famously Robert Downey Jr. was able to add charisma to the character while still maintaining the ego of Tony Stark. When looking at two of these films, there's an effort to maintain the comic book elements as to distance themselves from the previous studio style of writing these characters. So we have less quippy and snappy dialogue. The characters actually feel like larger than life heroes and not just human beings with powers. Like how Lois Lane is actually a journalist who is super energetic and has interesting dilemmas with Superman, who she obviously knows is Clark Kent. Her character is the personification of that comic book charisma, but it's never overdone or uninteresting. And I can say the same thing about both characters in both films. David Corenswet is Superman. That is it, nothing else. Sue Storm feels like the glue that holds everyone together, but never tries to be overly sentimental or one-dimensional. She's written with sincerity, but not ignorance. She doesn't blindly follow the other three around or just be in the background. She's actually very, very cool in this film. I honestly feel like we haven't gotten any actual cool and interesting characters in superhero films in a while. So it's very much refreshing to see new and interesting characters for audiences to grow attached to. Both films really shine in great world building and characters, but as films, are they able to make us want to follow these characters? And to be honest, no. And I say that because both films, in my opinion, fall flat in their attempts to build interesting plots for our heroes. Both films have an underlying sense of desperation in themselves that holds back the experience of what a superhero film should be. And ultimately, in the end, they make the interesting world and characters fall flat to the audience. By no means am I saying you shouldn't like these films or feel excited based on what these films are doing. No, I am not saying that. What most people are getting out of these films are the strong character elements, and that is enough to propel excitement for the future, and that is a great thing considering the previous state of comic book films. But in a lot of ways, these films will get to a certain point where that is all they're trying to be, and that is agreeable, basic, safe enough, to the point where the actual reasons for these films isn't great world building or characterization. As for Superman 2025, the film is going for a comic book type atmosphere. The film from the jump has a lot of stuff going on. The world of James Gunn is very vibrant, colorful. Every character feels like they're talking very fast. Common citizens are so used to superhero battle, it's almost second nature to them. The world and movie itself wants to make the first impression. This DC world is hectic and fun, which in a lot of ways is accurate to what DC comics are like. The DC universe in the comics has some of the most wacky concepts you can imagine, and having it being shown is totally interesting. But by no means does this film keep up that tone. Around halfway through the film, we start losing the overall focus of who this film is supposed to be about. The film starts to become more of an ensemble piece featuring Superman. From the beginning of the film, we are thrown straight into the conflict Superman has to deal with. And for me, it was my favorite section of the film. I genuinely was in love with the world building, the vibrant colors, the weird and fast dialogue. It's quick and fast, but not overwhelming. There's room for the film to live in this world and with Superman and Lois Lane. Once we meet the other heroes in the film, Guy Gardner, Mr. Terrific, Hawkgirl, the film honestly doesn't lose me. It still feels very fun and comic booky. But once we get into that half point where Superman is in a cage, the film itself turns into every single modern superhero film, where the central character, who the audience is here to see, is a background character for other heroes to take main stage. Everything comes to a halt in the middle section of this film. The interesting world building and wacky concepts just become stale after a while because we as an audience are told how to feel, and it feels like being thrown wacky stuff in our face. The scene where Superman is able to finally escape the cage he's in, and that whole section felt like filler. A new character is introduced and it feels so random, and the emotional weight falls flat on his face. Then we move into the third act, and by all means, everything starts to feel flat. Is it fun? Yes. Entertaining? Not so much to me. By all means, Lois, Superman, and Lex carried what felt like an overstuffed, end of the world jumble mess of a climax that is so uninteresting and so typical of modern superhero films. The wackiness of the world just renders this climax to feel so flat and retrospective, and the action unfortunately doesn't save it for me. You might be wondering how this film compares to the Fantastic Four to me. The Fantastic Four is more stripped down and more of a simple superhero film. The stakes are high in the beginning, but the film is more about the family dynamic of Reed, Sue, Johnny, and Ben. The stakes are taken more seriously in this film. The movie has interesting concepts while having those sci-fi and fun concepts the original comic book Fantastic Four are known for. So what makes this film seem so desperate in comparison to Superman? And that fact is the overcomplication of simplicity. Now for this film, I can't deny the best aspects. The story here is actually very good. Like, given the trailers, I wasn't sure what direction this film would go in for its story. I thought maybe there would be a way for the Fantastic Four to be introduced into the MCU by the end of the film, considering the constant use of multiverses, but no. This film by no means is tied to the MCU. This is set in a different world and time period from the MCU entirely. The story is something I didn't think Disney's MCU would really adapt. It shocked me where the story went after the initial buildup, and while Galactus is underpowered in this film, his inclusion is still very, very cool. The world, set design, characters, and overall feel of the film felt interesting. The sci-fi elements aren't overbearing, but still are very cool. All Fantastic Four are interesting, and the family dynamic is never questioned or weak in this film. Really, the only one of them that felt a tad bit underwritten was Ben, who is still cool but doesn't involve himself into the plot as much as the other three, and really is lacking in standalone development. in this film. Honestly, I really liked where the story unfolds from the beginning to the midsection of the film. Even though the editing in this film felt a bit lacking and noticeable, I couldn't deny, as a Fantastic Four fan, I was liking what I was seeing up until that third act. The third act of this film really is where the film's shortcomings started to become apparent. The speed editing of dialogue scenes that don't give the audience time to breathe, the music cues, the character of Shia LaBeouf all started dragging the film down for me. Shia LaBeouf is uninteresting as a character. The film spends a lot of time with her and wants you to think of her as an interesting character and a big threat, but she's just boring. She doesn't feel that strong, and Galactus as a character was a way cooler villain, but the film spends so much time with her just for her to, in the end. The cut of this film feels like it was cut down to fulfill a 2-hour limit. There are whole scenes that are about to start that just cut abruptly in this film. The world building is interesting because it's set into a retro 1960s futuristic world, but none of the Fantastic Four talk in a way that fits the theme. And this may seem nitpicky, but there's literal broadcasts and other characters throughout the film that talk as if they're within the time period. The emotional moments with one character are such obvious attempts to tug at heartstrings, it's insulting. The movie wants you to care so much about what is happening, but it goes about this by telling you how to feel, when to clap, when to laugh, when to say aw. And it does it by making every scene be efficiently edited as possible to get the point across. And that was the biggest problem for me. The film was at its best when it was being simple, just introducing the world and characters and building the stakes, actually taking time and caring about dialogue. But after a while, it feels like another attempt to audience, please like our movie, please feel this way about our movie. That is the problem I had about both of these films. I was someone who thought after the announcement of both of these films that we would be getting into a new era of superhero films. Superhero films that can have their own identity without having the desperation and wanting to be liked. I know what most people are going to say after watching this review. All superhero films have the same aspects to them. What did you expect different from superhero films when they all follow the same structure? Why can't I appreciate films for actually having color, well-written characters that aren't just quip machines? Why can't I appreciate the care that these actors put into these roles? Why? And by all means, I understand their points. Both of these films have seemed to gotten a positive reception so far, and by all means look to be successful, which is a great thing. Given the talk around both of these films, and even Thunderbolts, both the MCU and James Gunn verse are setting out to make films that want to have personality and stand out from the previous studio's films. Universes that grab more from the comic books these characters are inspired by, which is what I want in the end. But I feel these two films becoming successful may create the opposite effect, as much as I say I don't want it to. These films feel desperate in an attempt to win over audiences with likable and agreeable politics, safe and uneventful storytelling with incorporations of ensembles, fast editing, obvious emotional story beats, and uneventful villains. But the thing is, you can make that exact point about all superhero films. Nearly all superhero films have these issues, even some of the best of them. So what makes these films stand out in particular? And that is that lack of desperation. Look at films like The Batman, Spider-Verse, or Captain America Winter Soldier. Films that have a main objective of progressing character developments of their said protagonists. Steve Rogers, Bruce Wayne, Miles Morales, even some of the worst superhero films have distinct personalities and can be rewatchable or enjoyed from a certain crowd. There isn't a sense of making something so important or something so ironic it has to wink at the audience to say, please like us. To make this point clear, I am not a hater of people who love these films. I'm actually glad that these superhero films seem to be going back to those glory days where these unknown superheroes or teams have their own focus and characterization. But for me, if we allow for desperation filmmaking to be the new standard, we will lose the love we have for superhero film. And studios will be incentivized to do the bare minimum, which was the primary cause for the downfall of superhero films post 2019. Overall, to conclude, I think both of these films are a step in the right direction, which is what superhero fans need right now. They're both really flawed, but they're both entertaining summer blockbusters with interesting moments and can truly be great in their ideas. But at the same time, they are bogged down with the distrust within themselves to be something that people can resonate with, which is why, to me, they're both just very disappointing. And that is my review for Superman and the Fantastic Four. Honestly, I don't want to be that person to say that these movies are terrible or that you shouldn't go watch them. Honestly, if you are a superhero fan, go see them, support them. This is, like I said, a step in the right direction. But for me, honestly, as a superhero fan, I felt disappointed, and these films more than likely are not going to be anything that I would rewatch or be inclined to talk about. If you like the video, please like and subscribe, share this around. It's been a while since I posted a movie review. My next movie I'm looking forward to is Weapons.